Welcome to Beautifully Consumed. I'm Chelsea Leigh, owner of Chelsea Leigh Jewelry and your host. I'm just a girl that decided to go for it, and now I'm a successful business owner. But there's more to life than business, and that's why I found myself on a mission to love and become my most true self. I'm so excited to have this podcast as a space where we can do that together. You're in the right place if you're ready to be wildly dedicated to finding your purpose, becoming your most true self, and learning what it means to be beautifully consumed by living a life that is undeniably yours. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beautifully Consumed. I'm your host, Chelsea Leigh. So as always, before we get into the episode, I want to let you know that I am posting all of my episodes on YouTube, but unfortunately, today's episode, I got all the way through, finished recording, and realized that my camera didn't actually record the video of me. So this episode still will be up on my YouTube channel, but there's not going to be any visual video of me talking. So sorry about that. There's no video for this one today, but don't worry, moving forward, you'll have videos on YouTube for all the episodes. All right, so I'm going to start this episode out by telling you, unfortunately, I've got some bad news for you. It turns out that getting up at 5 a.m., going to the gym, getting your day started early, and getting your shit together actually works. I know, eye rolls, right? Never in my 30 plus years of life did I think I would be sitting here telling you that not only am I a morning person, but I actually prefer being a morning person. I am someone who would have considered myself a naturally born night owl. I have been that way most of my life. My mom is the same way. I always preferred staying up later. I never felt awake or alert early in the mornings. I didn't enjoy getting up early. I just generally prefer staying up later. I am a creative person, and I feel like that's where a lot of my creative energy comes in, is late at night. I feel like I get more energy in the evenings. So it's not that I never tried to be a morning person. I certainly did. And my whole life I've heard everybody say, oh, you have to get up early and get your day started in order to be successful. Or if you want to meet your goals, you have to start your day early and get up before the sun and blah, 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 blah. We have all heard it. And my whole life, I just never felt like I resonated with that. And I kind of thought, well, that's a bunch of BS because I'm successful and I do all these things, but I don't get up early. I stay up late and get it done at night. So why does it matter? And while I know everyone is different and not everyone fits in a box, like I said, I thought I was just built differently and I was just a night person, but I was so wrong about that. So I'm going to tell you in this episode everything about how me, a naturally born night owl, is now a morning person, and how I actually came to love and prefer mornings over late nights and evenings. And I give you full permission to eye roll as many times as you want at me throughout this episode. I know that this might not resonate with everyone, but I am coming from a place of this was me. Like I was that person that felt like I could never be a morning person. And these are the things that I have done to change my mindset and to change my routines. And now actually being a morning person, I love it. And I see why everyone else loves it and wants to talk about it and share it with everyone. So again, you're welcome to eye roll at me all you want, but at least just hear me out because I'm not someone who has always been this way. I have been where you are if you're also feeling like, oh, I'm just not meant to wake up early. It's just not my thing. So trust me, I get it. And if you are already a morning person, keep listening because there's always something you can learn, or maybe you can implement something differently into your mornings to make them that much better. So like I said, I have always preferred the evenings. I never had an easy time waking up early. I never felt alert or awake early in the mornings. I felt more of that later in the evenings. I got that like second burst of energy late at night, which I'm sure many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're an evening or a night owl, I felt more creative in the evenings. That's where I got a lot of my ideas for my business and my designs and all that kind of stuff. I feel like evenings were just where I felt I performed the best. Now, there was a small period in my life where I was working a typical 8 to 5 office job, but where I lived, I had like a 45-minute to an hour commute each way. It got to the point where I was so tired of commuting to and from work and losing all of that time. I would get home from work, change, go to the gym, work out, come home, shower, make dinner. And by that time, it was basically time for me to go to bed and do it all over again. I didn't have time to hang out with friends or do any other type of hobby. My evening was basically spent commuting, going to the gym, eating dinner, and then going straight to bed. And if I did want to go do something with friends or whatever, I had to sacrifice going to the gym. So that is a huge priority of mine, is working out and getting movement in. And so at that point in my life, I was just not willing to sacrifice getting that daily movement and going to the gym over going to the bar with some friends. So I was really I felt like a lot of time was being stolen from me. That's when I decided that I could make a change. So I decided to actually start booking a workout class in the morning before I had to go to work. So I would go to a spin class probably like 5 or 5:30, then come home, get ready for work, and then make that commute into work. And then that way, after work, all I had to do was commute home, and then I had all evening to do whatever it is I wanted to do. That period of time was very short-lived because I didn't necessarily see myself as a morning person. I just was making the decision to get up early and get it done. There was a small glimmer of like, oh, this is nice and I feel good. But I still at that time would not have considered myself a quote unquote morning person. It was just a decision I felt forced into, or a decision that I was making in order to make up for time later. So because I had that kind of mindset around it, that was a very short-lived period of my life. And it was kind of around that time I remember hearing about this theory where you get that second burst of energy around like 10 p.m. And if you're a night owl, I know that you can relate to this. And I heard this theory about why that happens or why that is. And it kind of goes back to our caveman type days where we didn't have power or electricity or artificial light. And you kind of, in those days, you woke up when the sun came up and you went inside and went to bed when the sun went down. Because if you were outside of your shelter in the middle of the night when it was pitch black, you basically were defenseless and it was dangerous. There was animals you had to defend yourself from. It basically was just dangerous to be outside in the middle of the night. So naturally, we would wake up with the sun and go to bed with the sun as well. And so if you found yourself outside of your shelter in the middle of the night, say around 10 p.m. when it's pitch black, it kicked on this survival mode because you couldn't just lay down and go to sleep or turn the flashlight on your phone on and use your GPS to find a hotel for the night. You kind of had to go into this fight or flight state in order to survive throughout the night. And so I remember hearing this theory of how that is ingrained in us. And when we stay up past 10 p.m., past that sunset, we sort of have that deep down instinct to turn that fight or flight mode on, which I remember hearing that. And I was like, wow, that is so interesting. And that makes perfect sense. But again, I moved past it because I was like, I do get that second burst of energy around 10 p.m., but it can't be because of that. It's just because I was born to be a night owl and I'm just not a morning person. So that, I think I'm just setting you up and letting you know where my mindset was kind of my whole life essentially, but especially around this period of my life where I was trying to wake up early, but just didn't see myself as a morning person. Now, obviously, I would consider myself a morning person now. That's what I'm sitting here talking to you about on this podcast. So let's talk about when and how I made that change. So it was probably about a year and a half ago that my boyfriend Brad and I, our work situation sort of changed. Up until about a year and a half ago, we both worked from home. I run my own business, so I have a very flexible schedule. I can work essentially whenever I want. I want to arrange my schedule and work for 12 hours one day and then 3 hours the other day. Or if I don't want to start work until 1 p.m., I have the flexibility to do that. And I'm so grateful for that. Brad, when he was working from home, he also had a little more flexibility in his schedule. So we would go to the gym kind of whenever it suited us best throughout the day, whether that was on our lunch break or, later in the afternoon when there was a lull in meetings, whatever the case may be. When you work remotely or work from home, you do have more flexibility to fit in your schedule. You're not having to physically be in an office and commute to and from the office. So that was nice. And I'm going to talk about working out a lot because that is probably one of our number one priorities is to get daily movement and daily exercise in. So that is our day, and our priorities are largely centered around that. So again, both of us working from home, we kind of had the flexibility to go work out whenever it suited us best. Well, then Brad got a new job where he had to start going into the office every day. And then he would go to the gym after work, which meant that he didn't really get home until sometimes 7:30. So that left me to make dinner, have it ready. I would walk the dogs, feed the dogs. And it kind of started to feel like, okay, I'm doing all of this stuff and you're going to work and coming home and having dinner on the table for you. And then we go to bed and do it all over again. And we also were not getting to spend as much quality time together with him going to the gym after work and me working out separately at another time throughout the day. So that did not last very long before we realized this just isn't going to work for us because A, we want to spend more quality time together, and B, I want us to equally share these responsibilities around the house. So we made the decision to both wake up early together and go to the gym before he had to go into the office. And I was totally on board with this because one, I was like, this will help me get on track and get up and get my day started. Since I do work for myself, sometimes I have a hard time like sticking to a real schedule because quite frankly, I don't have to. So I was like, this will help give me some more structure, but it also will help us spend more time together. We can wake up together, hold each other accountable, go work out together, and then we will have all evening after he gets off of work to spend time together. So we started doing that. We started getting up at 5 a.m., hitting the gym around 5:30 and starting our days that way. Now, I had the same mindset of, okay, I am going to do this knowing I'm not a morning person, but I'm just going to commit myself to doing it because I know that this sacrifice will help me gain things in these other areas of my life. So I started going to the gym and waking up early again, not seeing myself as a morning person, but just seeing this as a decision I'm just going to make to help make other areas of my life easier. Well, now, almost 2 years later, I'm here to report that my mindset has completely shifted on this. And not only do I refer to myself as a morning person, but I actually really like it and enjoy it now. So I'm going to tell you my 6 tips on how I was able to do this and how you can take this and try it out for yourself. All right. So tip number 1, this might seem kind of elementary or obvious, but it needs to be said. And that is to wake up refreshed and ready to go in the morning. You have to have a solid nighttime routine. Your morning actually starts the night before. Duh, that sounds kind of obvious, but let me be more specific. So, obviously, you need a full night of sleep in order to wake up at the time you want to wake up. So, that means you are going to have to start going to bed earlier. You need to figure out how much sleep you need in order to wake up feeling refreshed. Generally, the rule of thumb is like 7 to 8 hours. Obviously, that can be different depending on who you are and what your needs are. But typically, because I wake up at 5 a.m., I like to be in bed and asleep at 9 o'clock, which that was a huge change for me. I was used to staying up until at least 11 or 12 every night, at least. So getting in bed at 9 o'clock and being asleep at 9 o'clock is an absolute requirement for me, because not only do you need enough time to sleep, but you need real good quality sleep as well. Something else that I implement in the evenings is around 8 p.m. I put my phone in another room, and I usually just throw it on the charger in another room, and I'll go ahead and do my skincare, get my pajamas on. I do that around 8 p.m. so my brain and body has the chance to start winding down. That way by 9 o'clock, I'm like fully relaxed and ready to actually go to bed and go to sleep. I am not perfect by any means. This is not something that I'm sitting here telling you I do religiously 100% of the time, but I would say that I've gotten to the point where this is more regular in my routine than not. And it really does help to put the phone down and just kind of let your brain unwind and relax a little bit before you actually have to get in bed. So limiting screen time is really big, not only for the blue light that comes into your eyes, but also just like the stress. I don't need to be checking emails or scrolling on Instagram, anything like that. I really don't need to be doing that right before I go to bed. So by putting my phone away in a different room, that has significantly helped. And I will say we're not huge TV watchers, but in the winter months, I would say we watch more TV than we do during the summer months, because it's just cold and it's dark. We'll kind of sit around and watch maybe one episode of something before we go to bed, but we're not huge TV watchers. In an ideal world, I would not watch TV at all before bed. And I would say in the summers, we do a really good job of that. Instead of sitting on the couch and watching an episode of something, we'll go sit outside on our back porch. We have a really awesome backyard. It's so nice and peaceful to sit out there, and we'll play with the dogs or walk the dogs, listen to some music, and kind of just enjoy the sunset and enjoy the evening before we have to go inside and get ready for bed. So in an ideal world, that would be my everyday situation, but sometimes that's just not real life. So you got to figure out what is realistic for you and try to just cut back in the places that you can. All right, something else I do in the evenings that helps tremendously is preparing for the next morning by laying out my gym clothes. I do everything I need to make that decision to go to the gym as easy as possible. So for me, laying out my gym clothes, having my water bottle and my headphones, my shoes, all right there and ready to go, it's just going to make that morning so much more mindless, and you can just kind of wake up and go on autopilot. You don't have to think about what am I going to wear or what am I going to do. And maybe getting up and going to the gym isn't exactly what you want to do first thing in the morning, but maybe you have kids and you make their lunches the night before instead of doing it in the morning. Or if you're going into the office, make your lunch or lay out everything you need the night before, lay out your outfit and your bag and all of that kind of stuff. Get it ready the night before, so morning you doesn't have to stress and think about it. That's something that has been very helpful for me. So that leads me into tip number 2, which is to have a solid morning routine. I know we all hear like my morning routine, whatever. I know it's so basic to talk about. Everyone talks about it, but that's because it works. having a routine and habits in place just helps to make your life so much easier. Like I said, it can kind of help you run on autopilot. So if you are someone who's tired and groggy in the mornings, this is just going to make things so much easier for you. So in the mornings, having all your stuff laid out, whatever it is you need to do to get your day started on the right note, to make it easy for you to get your day started. These are all things you need to do. My biggest tip here for the morning is you don't have to have this big, complicated routine. It can be as simple as you want it to be. And then maybe you add more stuff into your routine as time goes on. But start small and start simple and just get that nailed down. And then you can add on and make it longer, more complicated, but it really doesn't have to be that way. And I encourage you to find joy in the mundane because routines are supposed to be mundane. They're supposed to be repetitive. They're supposed to be honestly kind of boring. But if you learn to find joy and pleasure in those boring everyday moments, it's going to make it that much easier and enjoyable for you to get up and get through your morning routine because you know those boring, repetitive steps are going to help set you up and have a great day no matter what. All right, tip number 3. You guys are going to hate me for this one, but it needs to be said. You need a little bit of tough love because I also needed it and sometimes still do. But tip number 3 is do not hit the snooze button. I'll say that one more time. Do not hit the snooze button. This is so important in order to get up early and become a morning person. Trust me, I am someone who was a chronic snooze button hitter. If I needed to be up at 7 a.m., I had my first alarm for 6:40, 6:45, 6:50, 6:55, 7, 7:05, 7:10, 7:15, just in case I slept too long. Why did I do that? I don't know. I felt like I was getting more sleep by just having that alarm go off and then hitting snooze. And now that I look back on that, it seems so absolutely crazy. But at the time, that's just how I felt like I operated. I was like, look, this is just how it is. And this is just how I wake up. But now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, no, please do not do that. You're not getting restful sleep when you hit the snooze button like that. Now, there is some science behind this and why that actually is the case. And let me preface by saying I have 0 scientific credentials. I'm not a scientist. The most science I studied in college was freshman biology. So I want to throw that out there. However, I don't feel like you need a degree or official credentials in order to do your own research and learn about these things. So I'm just going to share with you in layman's terms what I have learned from people who do actually have those credentials. So just want to throw that disclaimer out there for you. And if you are interested in learning in more depth about what I'm talking about and hearing from those actual experts, you can go do that. I'll link everything in the show notes for you. Okay, so let's talk about this phenomenon called sleep inertia. So this is a relatively new term. Before it was officially named sleep inertia, it was often referred to as sleep drunkenness because it's that state when you wake up and you feel so groggy, you feel like maybe you're forgetful or you forget to button a button on your shirt or you put your socks on inside out. You just feel really tired, groggy, and sort of like you're impaired as if you are when you're drunk. And this is something that's very common. It happens to almost everybody. And this sleep inertia happens for many different reasons, but essentially it's when your body wakes up when it's still in the middle of a sleep cycle. So as you may or may not know, you have different stages of sleep throughout the night. There's deep sleep, there's light sleep, there's REM sleep. That's where you're having most of your dreams. So we kind of cycle in and out of these phases as the night goes on. And if you happen to wake up in the middle of one of those sleep stages, your brain is almost like lagging a little bit. That's what sleep inertia is essentially, is you waking up in the middle of a sleep cycle when you weren't actually ready to wake up. The effects of this can last for as much as up to a few hours after you wake up. It can look like impaired decision making, decreased alertness. It affects your self-control, your attention. It basically just feels like that part of your brain is still sleeping while you're awake. And again, these effects can last hours after you've actually woken up. So this can happen anytime. It can happen if you've taken a nap and you wake up and you feel more tired after taking a nap. It can happen if your alarm like jolts you awake in the middle of a sleep cycle. But I want to focus on why this relates to hitting the snooze button, because when you wake up and then you hit the snooze button, you are intentionally putting your body back into a state of sleep inertia. So you wake up, instead of just getting up and starting your day, when you hit the snooze button, you immediately tell your brain, okay, I'm going back into a sleep cycle because I'm going back to sleep. So your brain will head back to sleep and get back into one of these sleep cycles, which can last for like 90 to 100 minutes. They're not quick little cycles. So when you hit snooze, your brain goes back to one of these sleep cycles. And then 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later, your snooze alarm goes off. You are being jolted out of the middle of that sleep cycle. So essentially, you're just guaranteeing that you're putting your brain into this state of sleep inertia when you hit the snooze button. Why would you do that to yourself on purpose? Again, I know sleep inertia and this feeling of waking up in the middle of a sleep cycle and being groggy and stuff, it can happen anyway, regardless. But the fact that you would intentionally do that to yourself, you've got to stop. It's not helping you. That sleep that you get between snoozes, it feels so deep and so restful and like you're actually getting extra sleep. That's because you're literally going back into one of these phases of sleep. And then you're just pulling your body right back out of it. So it's not actually helping you in the long run. It would be so much more helpful for you to get up on that first alarm. Now, let's talk about your alarm jolting you awake and putting you in sleep inertia, even though you're getting up on your first alarm, because yes, that can still happen. But here are some things that can actually help you to wake up gently instead of being just pulled right out of one of the middle of these sleep cycles, even if you're getting up on that first alarm. I think, in my opinion, there's two ways to help. And one is to regulate your circadian rhythm, which I will talk a little bit more in depth here in a minute. But essentially, your circadian rhythm is your natural sleep and wake cycle. So by getting this regulated, it's actually going to help you to wake up around the same time every day anyway. So your body's going to naturally lightly wake you up instead of you being in the middle of deep sleep and your alarm jolting you awake. And again, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about circadian rhythm here in a few minutes. The next tip for trying to avoid sleep inertia on that first alarm is to have something that will wake you up naturally and gently. I got the Hatch alarm clock, and let me just tell you, this thing is massively life-changing. I wish I had this years and years ago. The Hatch alarm clock is a sunrise alarm clock. It has like a little light on the front that simulates a sunrise. So I wake up at 5 a.m. At 4:30, it slowly starts to turn on and get a little bit brighter, until 5 a.m. It is at full brightness. It's like the sun has come through the windows, even though it's still pitch black outside. It lights up the room, and it's also a sound machine. So it plays really nice birds chirping or rain in the rainforest or waves at the beach. Like you can choose a nice, gentle sound to be woken up to. But because that light starts to get a little bit brighter and brighter 30 minutes before your wake up time, it slowly starts to nudge you out of sleep without you noticing. Like I don't wake up before 5 a.m., but when I do wake up, it's almost as if I just have opened my eyes and now I'm awake. It's not this jarring, oh my God, where am I? What day is it? What time is it? Type of feeling. Honestly, the Hatch alarm clock has been such a game changer for being able to wake up when I want to wake up, feel rested, and feel like I woke up in a much more calming and natural state as opposed to just being completely jarred and jolted, which again, that's that sleep inertia that we talked about. So those are two things that you can do to help get up on your first alarm. But again, if you're going to snooze your alarm and go back to sleep, you're just doing yourself a disservice. You're putting your body back into one of those deeper stages of sleep, and then you're just going to jar yourself right back out of it. So do not do that. I will even tell you, I got the Aura ring and it tracks my sleep cycles. The other morning, we had an alarm go off. I think it was a weekend, and we accidentally had the weekday alarm still set and it went off. So I didn't want to get up at that time because I was like, it's the weekend. I'm going to sleep in a little bit. So I woke up with that alarm and I went back to sleep. And you can see on my sleep chart that immediately after that alarm went off and I went back to sleep, I went straight down into REM sleep, which is a deeper state of sleep. So that's what's happening when you're hitting that snooze is you're just going right back down into that deeper version of sleep. And that is not good for your brain if you're just going to try to force it to get up 5 or 10 minutes later. I know I'm jamming this down your throat, but trust me, this has been something that has helped me tremendously to actually get up and make myself become a morning person. So now you're like, okay, well, you've told me not to hit snooze and you've told me how to wake up more gently, but I still don't have the motivation or the energy to actually go ahead and get up. So here's a couple of tips that I've got for you to just go ahead and get up and get out of bed on that first alarm. So again, the Hatch alarm clock, because it turns on the light at the time your alarm goes off, it's almost as if someone flipped on the lights in your room. It's kind of hard not to get up when all the lights are on. So that is another reason why I love the Hatch. Another thing you can do if you don't have the Hatch alarm clock or you don't want to get that is to put your alarm across the room from you, whether it's your phone or an actual alarm. Put it somewhere else, like on the dresser or somewhere across the room where you actually have to physically get up out of bed to go turn it off. A lot of people like to keep a big glass of water next to their bed. And as soon as your alarm goes off, just chug that big glass of water. And trust me, that will absolutely help to wake you up because after you've chugged a big glass of water, you're not going to want to just lay down and go back to sleep. And Mel Robbins talks about this theory is her countdown theory. She says when her alarm goes off, she just counts down from 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up. You just count down and you just put your feet on the floor and you just do it. That definitely is a more of a mindset shift. And that is something that I think is needed in order to get up early, especially if you're not used to it. You have to change your mindset around it. It's going to take some discipline and determination. And quite frankly, that's just part of it. I will tell you it gets easier as time goes on. But as someone who has been consistently waking up at this time for almost 2 years now, I still have to remind myself, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I need to do. It's what I have to do. Just go ahead and do it. It's not easy, but it does get easier as time goes on. Okay, enough of that. Let's talk about the next tip, which is tip number 4, to regulate your circadian rhythm. So I mentioned circadian rhythm. That is essentially your body's natural 24-hour clock. So it's your natural sleep and wake cycle. This is something that we all go through on about a 24-hour basis. Every day, we get different hormones throughout the day at different times of the day. Those different hormones help us to wake up. They help us to feel more sleepy and go to bed. And there's ways that you can actually take your circadian rhythm and get it regulated in order for you to naturally wake up and fall asleep around the same times every day. Another disclaimer, I'm not a scientist, but this is just research I've learned from people who are actually credentialed in these areas. So I'm just sharing with you everything I have learned about this because I think it is so helpful and it can truly be transformative for you. I'll leave a couple of references in the show notes below if you want to go more into detail about circadian rhythm and all of the science behind it. It's actually really, really fascinating. But just on a high level, every morning, your body will naturally wake itself up by producing cortisol, which is a stress hormone, as I'm sure you're familiar with. It's often villainized, but it also does serve a positive purpose. So in the morning, your body will produce cortisol. That's sort of what wakes you up and gets you going for the day. And we all have this peak in cortisol at some point throughout the day. And naturally, about 14 to 16 hours after that peak is when your body or your brain starts to tell your body to get sleepy. It starts to release those hormones that are going to make you sleepy and get ready for bed. Now, there's things that you can do to help regulate your circadian rhythm, which is your sleep and wake cycle, help regulate this release of hormones throughout the day. And the big things that are going to help you do this are to go to sleep and wake up around the same time every day. This includes the weekends. And I know this isn't always realistic based on social events or based on your job or whatever you have going on. Like I said, I don't want to wake up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning if I don't have to, but I try to stick to like at least 2 hour, sometimes I push it to 3 hour difference. But by going to sleep and waking up within like 2 hours every single day, it's going to help get your body on this natural rhythm. You know, when you go on vacation for a week, most likely staying up later and sleeping in, and you get in this habit of doing that. And then the next week you get back to work and it feels so hard to get up early and get to work. And then at night, you're just like, oh, I'm not even tired. I want to stay up because the whole week before, while you were on vacation, you sort of shifted your natural sleep and wake times. That is a perfect example of your circadian rhythm. So by trying to keep this as consistent as possible, it's going to help you to have those hormones produced in your body that are going to help wake you up and help make you sleepy around the same time every day. Therefore, making it easier for you to get a better night's sleep and get up at the time you actually want to get up. Even though I do sleep in a little bit on the weekends now, I still find myself waking up sometimes naturally at like 6:30 when that never would have happened before because I'm consistently waking up at 5 a.m. during the weeks. So my body is just used to getting up earlier. Something else you can do to help regulate your circadian rhythm is by getting sunlight in your eyes early in the morning and late in the evening. There are different waves of light emitted early in the morning and later in the evening than there are midday. Without trying to get too sciencey, I listened to the Huberman Lab podcast where he interviewed a doctor on there who specializes in circadian biology. This episode was very long and very scientific, but if you can get through it, it's so fascinating. But essentially, he talks about our eyes and the cells we have in our eyes. And we have two different types of sight. We have sight where we can see you can see the hand in front of your face. You can see images and, what we think of as vision. But then there's also this subconscious vision where this subconscious vision actually is able to interpret different waves of light and sort of tell what time of day it is or where you are in time based on the light that's being emitted. So much so that even people who are considered blind, they still have this subconscious sight where they're able to understand if it's nighttime or daytime on a subconscious level. Anyway, I don't want to butcher all of that information, but it's so fascinating that we have this subconscious vision that can receive different signals of light and understand where we are in time. And that signals to our brain, okay, it's time to wake up, or it's time to go ahead and start getting sleepy and actually go to sleep. So by viewing these early morning and later evening sunlight, like watching the sunrise or watching the sunset, it's going to signal to your brain, okay, it's time to start waking up for the day, or it's time to start winding down and getting ready to get sleepy, which is just so wild to think about. But nature is just so powerful and amazing. And who doesn't love watching a beautiful sunrise or sunset? So that's just an excuse for you to go out and watch the sunrise or watch the sunset. And if you live in a place where you can't physically see the sunrise or sunset, you don't have to actually see that itself. You can just be outside around those times, and being outside and seeing the light that is being emitted during those times is just as beneficial. And of course, never look directly at the sun to the point where it's like causing damage or burning your eyes. That's not at all what you want to do, but just receiving the light waves that are being emitted early in the day and late in the evening are going to help to regulate your natural 24-hour sleep and wake cycle. And then that leads me to also talking about artificial light from all of our technology. We've all heard about blue light and how that can negatively impact us. By looking at all of this artificial light after the sun has gone down and after it's dark out, it can sort of mess with that subconscious vision that I was talking about. And it kind of tricks your brain. It's like, wait a second, maybe it's not time to go to bed if it's still this bright. Obviously, we live in a time where eliminating technology is probably not going to be realistic, but trying to limit your screen time, especially before you go to bed, is going to help you sleep better and help you get that circadian rhythm on a more regular cycle. Something else is to stop eating so close to bedtime. That is going to help you get such better sleep. I tried to stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bed. I think ideally I would try to do 3 to 4 hours before I go to sleep. And the reason for this is sleep is when your body recovers and repairs, when your brain flushes out toxins. It's so important for us to get sleep for our immune health, for just our overall health in general. Sleep is so, so important. That is what is happening when you're sleeping. But when you've eaten something right before you go to bed, instead of your body focusing on resting and recovering, it's actually spending a lot of its energy on digesting your food. So trying to eliminate eating right before bed is going to help your body focus on that rest and recovery instead of digesting. And it's really fascinating. I mentioned I got the Aura ring and it tracks my sleep. On the nights where I've eaten too close to the time I've gone to bed, I can visibly see how it has negatively impacted my sleep, which is so eye-opening to me and something I never even thought about. But now I try to be very, very conscious of that, because in order to wake up early, you need to have a real restful night of sleep. And to have a restful night of sleep, you need to be going to bed on somewhat of an empty stomach, so your body's not just focusing on digestion throughout the night. All right, so all of those things are just kind of some tips to help you regulate your sleep and wake cycle and ultimately just help you have that more restful and efficient type of sleep that you need in order to wake up feeling rested. And there's so much information and research on this. I encourage you to look into it further if you want the more scientific explanations of all this instead of just the Chelsea Leigh dumbed down version of this. But hopefully that kind of opens your eyes to some of the science behind why we should be doing these things in order to get better sleep. Okay, moving on. We're not going to talk about science anymore in this episode. I've got 2 more tips for you. So, tip number 5 is to incorporate me time in your mornings. This is so important because this is going to help make your morning so much more enjoyable and make it something that you actually look forward to. Having a morning routine is very crucial to making your morning run smoothly and efficiently and kind of help put you on autopilot. But by throwing in something in there that is just for you, it's going to help set you up for the rest of your day and just make you feel like proud and grounded or happy that you made time to do something for yourself in the morning. And this can be as big or as little as you want it to be. For me, it's going to the gym. Working out is a huge priority of mine. And I just feel so good when I've actually prioritized this is something I'm doing every day for myself to feel better. But maybe for you, you don't want to go to the gym first thing in the morning. Maybe you want to have a more relaxing and slow morning. That's totally okay too. Maybe you like to read in the mornings or do something like meditate or yoga or just go on a nice walk outside. Any of these things are great ideas. For me, mornings feel so stress-free because I am taking the time to do something for myself before allowing all of the stress and responsibilities of the day to come flooding in. It just makes me feel so much more grounded and set up to have a successful day when I've taken the time to do something that I want to do before doing all the things that I have to do or all the things that I need to do. So I encourage you to throw on Do Not Disturb on your phone. You don't need to be scrolling on social media. You don't need to be responding to texts or emails. Just take whatever time you can get, even if it's only 10 minutes. You deserve to give yourself a little bit of time in the mornings to fill up your own cup before you're able to fill up anyone else's. All right. And then the last tip is mindset. You have got to shift your mindset. I know I touched on this a little bit earlier, but getting up early and doing something different is going to be difficult, which means it's going to require you to be mentally tough and make a commitment and stick to it. The best thing you can do for your self-confidence is to make a promise to yourself and keep that promise. Because when you decide you want to do something and you actually do it, you're just going to feel like you can do anything. You're going to feel on top of the world. When you keep promises to yourself, you know you're good for anything else. So having the mindset of, yeah, this is going to be hard and this is something different, but knowing it's going to be so worth it, it's going to make you so much more mentally tough and resilient for anything else that comes your way in life. Something that I did when I first started waking up early to help me was before I had the Hatch alarm clock, I just had the alarm on my phone and I made the background on my phone a big quote and it said, "Are you who you want to be?" When my alarm went off in the morning, I was forced to read that and ask myself, am I who I want to be? Because hitting the snooze button would be no. But getting up, getting out of bed and going to the gym, I would be able to answer that question with a hell yes. Small things like that, like what can you do to really just help you shift your mindset of, yes, this is going to be hard, but I can do it because it's something I want to do to better myself. I also strongly believe that knowledge is power. So everything I've talked about in the episode, especially the science-backed stuff, like how sleep actually impacts our health and our brain and our well-being, learning about circadian rhythm and how to regulate that, just learning all of these science-backed, evidence-based things about sleep and waking up early and getting in movement early in the day. It is so powerful to know that. And it's almost like once you learn that stuff, it is so hard to revert back to your old ways, because if you're someone who truly wants to better your life and do better for yourself, you're going to learn this information and it's going to feel so much easier to make these decisions once you know how it can truly positively impact you. Something else that's super important related to mindset is knowing why you're making this decision. Like, why do you want to start getting up earlier? Why do you want to be a morning person? As I mentioned before, for me, it was to be able to spend more time with my boyfriend. And so we could get some of that time in our day back. And now it's shifted to that, but also to prioritize myself first and put myself first and have this me time in the mornings is so important in order for me to have a really productive and successful day. So understanding why you're making this change is going to help you to really stick with it. And then the last thing I'll say on mindset is truly the energy in the morning versus in the evening is so much different. The energy in the morning is this new, refreshed, enlightened type of energy. It feels like there's opportunity. It feels just like this energy that's untapped and it's ready for you to take it on and make it into whatever you want to make it into. As opposed to the energy in the evenings, it's almost like evening energy is like this leftover. It feels procrastinated. It feels as if it's an afterthought when you wait until the nighttime to do the things you want to do and spend that me time, or, coming up with those creative ideas or getting your workouts in. If you're doing that kind of stuff in the evenings, again, I know everyone doesn't fit into a box. Everyone's schedules are different. Different things are going to work for different people, but this is just my experience of having experienced both, is that truly the energy at night feels as if I have put everyone else and everything else as a priority first. And then whatever time I get left over, I'm trying to make up for it by staying up late and taking that time to do the things I want to do and pour into myself, as opposed to starting my day that way. It just feels so different. And I don't know how to describe that other than telling you, you just have to try it for yourself and experience it for yourself. So to recap, my 6 tips for getting up early and becoming a morning person is: 1, your morning starts the night before. So having a really strong evening routine and setting yourself up for success. Number 2 is to have a solid morning routine so you can kind of put yourself on autopilot and just make it super easy for you to get up and get started. Number 3 is do not hit the snooze button. Number 4 is to regulate your circadian rhythm and learn how to not only get enough sleep, but to get real good quality sleep. Number 5 is make sure you're incorporating something for you in your mornings. Having that me time is so essential in order to get you ready for the rest of your day and everything the world is going to throw at you. And number 6 is changing your mindset, because this is going to be difficult if it's not something you're used to. And you've got to be prepared to be mentally tough to make the change. But I promise you, if you commit to this, like, just try to give it a shot for 30 days. You can do anything for 30 days. I know you can. Give it a shot for 30 days. See how it changes your life. See if you love it or not. If you don't, whatever, go back to some of your regular habits, and that is totally fine. You've got to find a balance of what works best for you. But hopefully you can take at least one of these tips and help it to make your days better and help you to get closer to the person and the version of you that you want to become. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you found some of this helpful. If you have any questions or if you give any of these tips a try, I would love to hear from you. Send me a DM on Instagram at Beautifully Consumed. I'd love to chat with you in the DMs there. And that is all for today. Hopefully you didn't have too many eye rolls at me. Hopefully you learned something. And I will see y'all next week.